Welcome to the Rich in Purpose Childhood Trauma Summit. We're here today with Pamela Abijah. She's the founder and coach in the Healing Dynamic, and she has quite the story herself. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you for taking the time because, Pamela, once I was reading your story and where you came in life, I'm so excited for you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, from where you started and how you got your childhood trauma to where you are now, and then some of the steps that you use in your coaching process to help people get to the place where you've gotten. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm originally from Nigeria and I was born in Nigeria and I was born into a family that was my mom and my dad were narcissists and my dad he passed away when I was 5 years old. But I am actually a child sexual abuse survivor. My father was my abuser, and it happened at a very, very, very young age. At the time, I didn't, I was so young, I didn't realize the impact that it had on my life until I became a full-blown adult and I began to just kind of look back on my past relationships with men particularly, and I noticed there was a pattern. And I noticed that I kept having repeated failed relationships. At that point, I had to make a decision and say, I need to figure out what's going on here. Like, this is not okay. And so in 2021, I put it out there. I was like, I need help. I need help to kind of untangle my life and figure out why I kept attracting narcissistic men. And I worked with an amazing coach. She kind of helped me work through a lot of deeply rooted faulty belief systems that I carried inside. And there was a lot of triggering moments in session that I had to kind of work through. I didn't really have language for what was happening to me internally initially, but she was a great guide and she helped me put language to my emotional experiences. It was then during the work that I was doing that I realized that I was sexually abused by my father. And that was the very first time that I was traumatized. I think I was probably like a year or two old. 2 years old, I would say, was when I was traumatized by my dad. And so that in itself was so profound. And I I actually went on disability for 6 months during that time. And it was a very deeply transformative period of my life. I had to really take inventory of my relationships beyond, intimate partners, but like my friends. I had a lot of grieving to do during that time. I let go of, I think, three of my close friends that I thought were actually friends or good friends. And I was in a really, really dark place during that time. I think that I slipped into depression for a while. And as I started to come out of it, I began to kind of become whole, become one with myself again. During that time, I reinvented the relationship I had with myself. Some of the tools that my coach helped me, that I used during that time was, a lot of meditations and journaling and, just spending time in nature where I'm able to like become one with the stillness. There was a lot of introspective work in that way that it really helped me to see myself, and I began to see my own value because as a child I was exposed to a lot of criticism, both from both my parents, but especially my mother. I didn't feel like I had any worth or value to my life. So during that time that I was working through the emotional wounds that I carried inside, as I cradled my inner child and was, helping her heal. I began to see her worth. I began to see her true value. I began to say, oh my gosh, you are enough. Like, you don't have to do all the things. You don't have to keep, reaching out for external validation. You don't have to keep people pleasing to feel like you belong, or you to feel accepted. So I basically went through the process of accepting myself as who, for who I am, and loving myself. And as I began to do that, all those fragmented pieces that were shattered in with the, from being exposed to trauma, they began to reintegrate, and I became whole again. Um, just a quick point, like when I decided to go and seek help, before then, I like, again, I was questioning my past relationships with men, but I also felt a void, an emptiness inside. I began to question, like, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? Like, I felt like there was more to what I was. At the time, I was working as a registered nurse. I was working in a hospital, and it just felt like I was just on this hamster wheel, just doing the same thing over and over. And I'm like, I felt so empty. Like, I said, like, something, there's got to be more to this than what I'm being dealt with. So that's one of the reasons why I said, no, I have to get to the bottom of this. So anyway, as I'm doing the work and I'm coming out of this depression, I began to, it's amazing how it came to me. It's funny, I was in the shower, and I was just, at that point, I was so much in my head and in my heart that it just hit me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm being called to do. I'm called to help people, heal from generational trauma. This is my calling. And I felt like it's amazing. It was so profound. I felt like God was talking to me. Like, it just kind of like a revelation. That's what it felt like. And so, and that's when I realized, okay, I have a lot of value. I have something to give to the world, because I have my lived experience. I've been through it, and I'm now on the other side of it. So I have to be able to put myself out there, which was a hard thing to do initially. But because I know that if I'm going through something like that, I can guarantee that others are going through the same thing too. So
Exactly.
yeah, so that was kind of, but I was terrified, I'll say. I did a whole thing trying to bargain with God. I'm like, are you sure you want me to do this? Like, this is scary. Like, I've never owned a business. I don't know how to talk to people. I'm not that vocal. Like, I don't know. And it took me a while. I really had to work through those negative thoughts to kind of push myself forward and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I haven't looked back since then. And so some of the tools that I use, or my approach and with my clients, is we got to work with the inner child. There's a lot of stuff that's happening underneath the surface that kind of drive the way we live our lives as trauma survivors. And if we don't get to the root of it, I do root work. That's how we approach it. Let's get to the root of everything. Sometimes, because trauma is a great disconnector, a lot of people don't even know the root of like, what happened. We lose our memories from our past. So I try to help them bring back some of those memories. I ask very very insightful questions that will help them kind of start thinking. And I noticed that when we begin to actually focus on our inner child, like really pay attention to the inner child, that inner child carries so much information. It's just a matter of sitting and just being still and just noticing, like, what do you have to tell me? Why is my life the way it is? Like, what are some things that I need to address here? So there was a lot of curiosity with me, like just being very curious with myself, my internal landscape, my emotions, all of that. And so in my healing, the healing process, I did a lot of homework, a lot of journaling, a lot of, questioning, and, it's almost like I became my own investigator. I was like my own Sherlock Holmes, just kind of digging and trying to figure out, okay, putting the pieces of the puzzle together, basically, is what I was doing. And then after I got, came to realize that this is what I'm being called to do, it felt like, oh my gosh, I felt so much clarity. Like, okay, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. This is my purpose. This is my identity, you know? And it was such a relief, but I was so excited. I felt like a brand new person, you know, like, wow. So I really do have a lot of value and I can give so much to the world. Like, so yeah, so that's kind of my story. I don't know if I answered the question, but that's kind of what,
Well,
what's
I think you told your story great for one thing, but the one thing I'm going to follow up with you, Pamela, is a little bit is you had a narcissist as a child, as for both of your parents, your mother
right.
and your father, even though your father wasn't with you past 5 years. But the one thing that we know about narcissists, which again, that's something that's becoming a common word these days. I had a narcissist boyfriend, I had a narcissist family, is their whole goal is really to kind of destroy you, right? And so as a child, to have a mother that really, I mean, we always ask, do narcissists love their children? And I don't think they do because they're not really capable of love.
Right.
But how did you start feeling love for yourself? Because that's key. When for most of your childhood, you didn't even have one person that loved you.
I think it was a decision that I had to make for myself. When I started to do the work with my coach, I had to decide that, okay, if if I was abandoned, emotionally neglected, abandoned as a child, and I'm deciding that I want more out of my life and to do more for myself, I have to be intentional about loving myself. And what does that look like? It looks like I said, cradling that inner child, like being with myself and nurturing myself and reparenting myself and giving myself all the things that I didn't get in my childhood, that emotional neglect that I experienced. I started to feed myself with all the validation and the acknowledgement and witnessing my pain. Like, okay, I see you. You went through this. It's this is your reality, and I'm here to empathize and to acknowledge you. So those are the conversations I was having in my mind, in my heart, with my inner child. And when she saw that I was there for her, never abandoning her, never walking away, and just sitting there and being with her and witnessing her, that was when she realized, okay, I am loved. I am lovable. I am enough. Like, so that was kind of how I started to love on myself again. But it took intentionality to do that.
Okay. Well, I mean, intentionality and courage are two different things,
Right.
right? Because I sit around and thinking, well, I'd like to be this person, right? And you think about the end, I really want to be this person. But then so many times you think about the steps that it takes to get there, and then the vulnerability it takes to get there.
Right.
How did you, with your coach, because of the relationship you had with your mother, how did you get the courage to really open up and and keep growing when I know that there had to be fear and feeling unsafe, right, when you were going through that process. So tell us a little bit about the process and how you had the courage to keep going.
Okay. And now you're asking with regards to how I addressed my mother in the healing process?
Yeah, and how you took that and turned it into a positive effect for you. Because
Okay.
so many times we don't ever really address the fullness of what keeps us stuck.
I see. Well, I think with my mom, I guess I could use that as an example. My in order for me to like really heal, one of the things that I had to do that my coach guided me to do was to actually, talk to her about my experiences in my childhood. My dad wasn't around at this point, right? So she was the one that I had to get vulnerable with. And absolutely, there was a lot of fear. It took a lot of courage. I think that from the time that she gave me that task, it took me a month for me to actually come to face my mother. And so I wrote a letter initially, and this first letter was more of just catharsis, just writing whatever came to me, uncensored. And I didn't send it to my mother. I just wrote it, and it was just more of just the feeling, getting up some of those trapped emotions inside of me as how I felt towards my mom. But the second letter, that was more like, okay, now I'm gonna take this to my mother. And I did. I took it to her, and I was very vulnerable with her. Like I said, there was a lot of fear there, and I had to really work up the courage to do that. So, but in that vulnerability, oh my goodness, something amazing happened in that time. I didn't know what to expect. And that's the thing, like when I was walking into it, I had to tell myself, Pam, you're doing this to honor your inner child. You're not doing it because you're expecting a specific outcome from it. And I had to keep telling myself that whether she apologizes or not, whether she acknowledges or not, it doesn't matter. I was just doing that to honor myself. So I went and I opened up and I was vulnerable, and it went really well, but it was so empowering after that whole interaction with my mom, that it gave me the strength to keep doing that with other people that maybe have hurt me, and continue to use vulnerability as a superpower for myself. And that helped to get me out of that stuck feeling of, okay, I'm trying to connect here. I'm trying to, I'm looking for acceptance here or there. And I didn't need that anymore, because I accepted myself, right, through the process of being vulnerable with my mother. And she, she's still a narcissist, but she acknowledged what happened to me. She said she apologized. She said she didn't even know, like all kinds of things, but there wasn't any gaslighting. There wasn't any, oh my gosh, you're being overreactive or whatever. Nothing like that. She was very accepting of, she was very receptive to what I had to share with her. So yeah, I think that was how I moved through that process of overcoming my fears and addressing the wounds that I carried inside of me. And so, yeah, I think I hope I answered your question.
You did. But, well, I think for a narcissist to kind of come and say that they, or even kind of understanding what, the effect they had on your life. Again, I think we can probably have another interview on that. But I also want to go over, based on your childhood, Pamela, you now have a son who
Right.
has autism, that he can't speak well,
Mm-hmm.
and now you didn't have a good childhood and people who loved you. How do you make that transfer into unconditional love, because you have never experienced it before, to your son? And and tell us a little bit about everything that you've done for him, because it is quite a story where a lot of people would think about themselves more than they think about their son. And I would like for you to kind of go through what you're doing for him now and how that affects your current life.
Oh yeah. So um I think with my son, there was always this because of my childhood experiences. Of course, I didn't want it to repeat itself with my child. There was a period when he was younger that I got divorced from his dad, and he was young then, and that was before I even got into my healing journey. So once it became clear to me after I did my work, it became clear, like, oh, he may have already been traumatized from that divorce, the splitting of, me and his dad. But I think that it was like, okay, what can I do to make amends? I felt the need to there was some overcompensating in the care that I was giving to my son, because I felt, again, there was some sense of guilt there. But I would say that as I began to love on myself, that love obviously transferred to my child in a way that I had to remove myself from the equation and look to see what is the best interest for Joshua. What does he need? So I'll give you an for the past year and a half, he's had a lot of behaviors in school, in the home. Then he was still living with me, and we had I had shared custody with his dad. So he would go between my house and his house every 2 weeks. And kids on the spectrum, they don't do well with the back and forth, and they need structure, they need routine. And he was showing signs and behaviors like, he would elope. I had to call the cops a few times, like, you know, property destruction. He would throw things, he was aggressive. And he wasn't like that before. So I kept asking, like, what is going on? And we had to get a psychiatrist on board to get him medications. Um, and I had to quit my job because I couldn't maintain, I was single mother at that point. I had to be home, and I couldn't maintain a full-time job with all these behaviors we were seeing in the school and at home. And but then at some point I was like, wait a minute, Pam, maybe this whole setup is not the best for him going between two homes, and it's affecting his behaviors, and it's affecting, his performance in school. And in February, it came to me that, perhaps he needs to be in a separate facility, like somewhere else where he can have a secure base and he can get the routine and the structure that he needs that he's not getting at home. But it literally took me 4 months to actually come to accept that that's what he needed. I was still holding on to my child. I didn't want to let him go because there was a feeling of, oh, if I let him go, I'm being a bad mother. Like I felt like I had to come up with some kind of solution that didn't involve moving him out of the house, So I had to work through that, and then eventually I said no. That was when I said, okay, I have to make the difficult decision and remove myself from the equation and say, what is the best interest for Joshua? How can I show love to this child, that is not selfish and that is not conditional, right? So I went ahead and, did what I had to do, and now he's in a group home. Even with the move to a group home, there still was some feeling of guilt, but the guilt was different this time. The guilt was, why didn't I do this earlier when he was telling me in his own way, Mom, I can't live in two homes. It's too much for me, So it's funny how I felt guilty for wanting to give him up, but then once I made that move and put him in a group home, then it turned to, oh, why didn't you do it earlier? So I started kind of beating myself up for that a little bit, but I worked through that as well. So, but now things are great. He is getting the care that he needs. It's a team effort with Joshua, and we're loving each other. I go and I hang out with him. We go to the movies. We're happy together. And it's just been, I think it was the hardest decision, but it was the best decision for my son. And that's how I was able to, extend that love to him, where it wasn't a selfish kind of, love. It was more like, okay, what does he need?
Well, and you can't love others more than you love yourself.
Yeah.
So as you started loving yourself more, that love flowed into your son, and now he has the best uh, place that he can, or best situation that can possibly be with them. Because I have to say, I had a friend who had a son. 1 week, 4 days he would spend with his mother, or 3 days with his son, and then the next week it would be 4 days with his father, 3 days with his mother. I don't understand how we got to that point.
Right.
Kids can't possibly be emotionally strong if you go through that.
Right.
But I want to ask you, Pamela, because the one thing that we all have concerns with is setting boundaries. So now you have the boundaries I get you set with your ex-husband. You have the boundaries that you set with your son Joshua by allowing him to go to a place that he's going to get more help. Tell us a little bit about how you have learned to set boundaries. You said you had 3 friends that you decided that weren't going to be good for you, and so you decided to not have them as friends anymore. I
Mhm.
mean, that takes courage as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, as far as like setting boundaries with the people that I love and like people that are
Yeah.
close to me. Okay.
Well, and also people, because a lot of times people will understand that we're here to kind of please them, and maybe like your three friends, did they try to get you to do things that you really weren't comfortable with, but you did them anyway? And then when you put the boundaries there, they no longer remain your friends. So I guess it's a matter of just boundaries in your life, because
Yeah,
if you don't have boundaries, right, you're not going to move forward.
absolutely. So with my friends, okay, so during the time that I was doing my, healing work, I actually ended the relationship because I began to see that, it was me pouring a lot more into the relationship than what I was receiving. I was being taken advantage of. So I didn't necessarily set well, I guess you'd call it a boundary. I ended it. I was like, no, we're done. But with regards to, let's say, my mother, for instance, that's a good example because she's in her 80s and she lives alone. And she got a diagnosis of dementia last year. I remember, I don't know, she has a history of trauma as well. She was also traumatized as a child. But and there was a point where she was pushing to move in with me. And she was playing, she was, oh, I need help. I'm old. I need help. I need help. And I need to get out of here. And it really pulled on my heartstrings because I'm like, yeah, I can see that. But I also recognize that she didn't have the capacity for us to actually have a healthy relationship within a confined space, like within a home. Like it wouldn't work for me because I know that she's still narcissistic, she's still manipulative, she's still all of that. And I knew that I would not be able to live day in and day out being exposed to that. So I said, you know what? We'll get you some help, Mom. You don't have to move in with me to get the help that you're looking for. And because she keeps saying, oh, we need to, it's too bad we live so far away from. I'm like, it's only a 35-minute drive, but she makes it sound like it's so far. Like, oh, we live so far. I'm like, no, Mom, I get in my car and she doesn't drive anymore. So I have to be able to go see her. But so I had to work through that too, because there was a little bit of guilt there. And I noticed the guilt, and I was like, okay, Pam, what's going to make sense for you? How can you protect yourself from, the criticisms? Because she still criticizes. How do you protect? Okay, and what would make sense to where you're able to help her meet her needs without feeling that sense of guilt? So I said, okay, we're gonna get you some help. And then we finally got her some help. So somebody comes to her house, spends time with her, helps her with the, things around the house. So I'm still able to love her from a distance, right? I get to go to her house, I take food to her house, I take her out, and then at the end of the day, I take her back to her place. And we've had a beautiful relationship since then. Like, I mean, we call, I talk to her every day on the phone, where we laugh on the phone. If she needs anything, I can get it to her. But I felt like that physical boundary was necessary for us to even have that kind of relationship. It would have been totally different if she lived in my house. It would have been totally different. And that would have been affected my mental health because yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of how I try to look at like what is the alternative solution to this issue to where I'm maintaining my boundaries, but I'm also, keeping her interests at heart too, like that kind of thing. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, with love comes forgiveness.
Right.
How did you walk through the forgiveness of everything that happened to you in your childhood as you gained the love? Because typically, so many times that, especially with the narcissist, it is very hard to forgive them because we know that they really didn't care
Right,
that they hurt
right,
us. So
right.
tell me how that mindset went.
Okay. This is a great question because there was a time when I was like, there's a part of me is like, you need to forgive your mom. You need to forgive your mom. Like I was feeling that pressure inside, and I'm like, and then one day I was listening to a sermon, and they were talking about forgiveness. And while they were talking about forgiveness, it hit me. I was like, wait a minute. For me, in order for me to forgive my mother and my dad for what they did to me, I have to be able to forgive myself first for this, for the abandonment. Because at one point in my life, I abandoned myself, right, in service of survival. So that was when I was like, oh my gosh. So then I started working on that self-forgiveness, like really just going in and, acknowledging that I did what I had to do to survive, that it wasn't purposeful. So working through that self-forgiveness was the first step. And then eventually, when I was able to talk to my mother and be vulnerable with her, and then when she was receptive to that, it made forgiving her easier. It made it easier for me because I've already forgiven myself. I've accepted, what I did, and, but I was able to forgive her because, we were able to have that vulnerable moment. I think that vulnerability is such a powerful thing. And so having that vulnerable moment just kind of opened both of us to each other, allowing for that feeling of forgiveness to come through for me. So that's kind of how I work through it.
Okay, great. Well, I want to kind of address this is that you have went through the trauma, which everybody that's watching this video, we've all went through trauma and we're all really kind of high achievers. So I really would like for you to go over with us, Pamela, from the time that you started to your healing, because you came into an awareness that you needed to heal and you needed to move forward. Now you're not only a trauma coach, but you're going to school to become a therapist, which is which shows, I guess, the audience that you're growing. You didn't get to this point and say, "Oh, I made it to here," but now you really kind of want to make it to the next level. So tell us a little bit about that process, and then what is the advantage to your coaching career now that you're becoming a therapist?
Okay. That's a loaded question. So we're talking about perfectionism, right? And then the process and my journey from coach to therapist and how all that is aligned. Yeah, perfectionism, I'm still working through it, honestly. It's still a thing, but I think it's much better now. A lot of self-talk, positive self-talk helps with that when I find myself questioning my work. Did I do enough? Is this good enough before I send this email? Like, and then I have to kind of reel myself back and it's like, no, Pam, this is good. You're human. It's okay to make mistakes. So those are the kind of things that I work through. But with regards to my journey of becoming a therapist and how it's been a beautiful thing because okay, so in all transparency, I never wanted to go back to school to be a therapist. I became a coach and I thought, okay, I'm good now. This is good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there was this, I don't know if you've ever experienced like this like yearning, this thing in your spirit, like, no, it's not enough. Like, so that's what I experienced. And the first time this feeling came over me to go back to school to become a therapist was in 2022. I was still doing my certification in trauma recovery during that time, but I was also thinking about, man, it would be nice to become a therapist. But then I was like, oh, I don't want to go back to school anymore. I don't want to go back to school. I was like, I'm done. I already have a master's. Like, what do I? So I was fighting the feeling. I was fighting it. And that feeling never went away. It was a calling. It felt like a call, like a pulling on my heartstrings, like this is where you need to be. This is your life calling. Like you can't run away from it. So I fought the feeling for good, like what, 2 years? Oh, 3 years. For 3 years, I fought the feeling. And then end of last year, like October of last year, it hit me again. I was like, okay, I surrender. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. So, but it's been amazing because a lot of things I'm learning in class, I apply to my clients in my coaching session. And they've been amazing. They're volunteering to be a practice client. And I feel like my life is really in alignment now. I feel like I am on track to my destiny and where I've always been, destined to be. Like this is my identity, this is my purpose. And it's hard. It's career transition is like I think that's the hardest thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Because I've been a registered nurse for what, 17, 18 years, and now I'm making a total shift, like a total pivot. And it's very destabilizing, right? But because of this intrinsic push, this urge, this unction in my spirit to just get this, therapy, that's what's keeping me going. Every day I wake up, I'm like, okay, what are we doing today? I know that I'm on a mission and I'm going to do what it takes to get to that, to so I can keep helping people break the cycle of generational trauma.
Well, I mean, it's really to getting to the next level, right? Is always your subconscious mind says, and sometimes I really believe the subconscious mind is there fighting against you as you're trying to go forward
Right,
because its only job is to keep you safe.
right.
So, Pamela, if somebody is in alignment with you, and they come to you for coaching, what is the first step that you would go through to say that would allow them to say that, yes, I really would like to work with you?
Oh, okay. Well, I think I think it's important for me to share a little bit what I do, right? But also let them know that I can possibly connect with you because I've lived it, right? My lived experience, I've been there, I've been through it and I've worked through it. So I'm not just here to just, coach you, but I'm here to hold your hand, to guide you, to be your compassionate witness, right? Because I know what it feels like to kind of work through those repressed emotions that we really don't want to look at our shadow, the parts of ourselves that we've kind of put away because there's shame there or there's guilt there. So I think giving them that reassurance that I'm not only your coach, I am your cheerleader. I'm your advocate. And I can be your guide, and knowing that they're the ones in the driver's seat. They're the ones that are driving this thing. And I'm just there to kind of hold their hand and guide them. I think that would be a good way for me to, reassure them that I'll be a good fit for them. Yeah.
Zig Ziglar used to listen to a lot of him, and he says, if a fat doctor tells you you need to lose weight, then you need to get another doctor, right? Because
Right.
he's telling you to do something that he's not doing either.
Right.
And
Right.
I think when you go to think about therapists and coaches, if they haven't been through what you've been through, then how are they going to get you to where you want to go, right? You can't get someone where you haven't been before. And that's what
Right.
I really like to stress with people
Mhm.
is when you're looking for help in this childhood trauma and overcoming it and moving to the next level, because so many of us are high achievers and we just feel stuck. And
Mhm.
you're a person that's went through not only narcissistic parents, but you found yourself, you're growing, and you have more of a purpose now than ever by going to the next level and becoming a therapist and becoming more valuable to the people that you've decided to help. And I just look at that as being amazing. I look at that as being something that people can reflect on and saying, if she can do it, then I think she might be able to help me do it as well. So
Mhm.
tell them, Pamela, how we'll put it on the screen, but just tell them how they can get a hold of you.
Oh, okay. Well, my website is thehealingdynamic.com. I do also have an Instagram page at The Healing Dynamic. And my phone number is I have a 925-450-0225. They can call me, they can email me. I have a contact form on my website if they want to reach out to me that way. Yeah, I look forward to hearing from anyone who would be interested in working with me.
Right. Well, the one thing who people have experienced childhood trauma is like, give me ways to get a hold of you because I don't want to wait 4 days for you to call me back, right? We search for like that instant gratification.
Yeah,
Well, it looks like they're going to get that when they try to connect with you. And Pamela, I
absolutely.
just want to thank you so much for helping us help people during this Transform Childhood Trauma Summit. And we will definitely keep you in touch with us. And we want to be able to help you grow the audience that we have. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Great.